What does it take to stand for truth when the crowd moves the other way? What does it look like to lead with conviction in a place that often misunderstands your faith? What about to walk in the Capitol every day, knowing your values might make you the minority voice in the room? Well, today on Clarity in Controversy, we are joined by California State Assemblymember James Gallagher. This is a man who has lived with that tension in courage and grace. He's a husband, he's a father, he is most importantly a follower of Jesus, who's learned how to stay grounded in his faith while navigating the chaos of politics. And so today we're going to talk about what it's really like to be a Christian conservative in California, how faith shapes decisions behind closed doors, and what it means to build friendships with people who see the world very differently than us. If you've ever wondered whether faith still belongs in the public square, or if you've ever felt outnumbered for what you believe, this conversation is definitely for you. My name is Terry Bella, and this is Clarity in Controversy. Assemblymember, welcome.
Good to be with you, Tanner.
Good to be with you. Before we kind of get in some of the meat of the conversation, I just want you to kind of tell me the journey, the story of what got you into politics. I know this wasn't always your story. What was the moment, the defining reality that you kind of came in contact with of this is something that I've been called to do?
You know, man, from a very young age, I was really interested in politics. My grandfather was involved in politics. He was involved with the Republican Party locally, and then he was a county supervisor. And I remember seeing that as a young kid and just being like, man, that's, to me, is inspiring. Like, standing up for your community and for a righteous cause. And I'd read about different leaders who did that, right? And so I would say, like, if you talk to people who grew up with me, they would probably not be surprised that I went into politics. It was always something that interested me. I didn't know exactly, what that path would be. I ended up going, graduated high school, grew up here locally, not very far from Destiny, actually about 30 minutes away, in South Sutter County. Went to Berkeley for undergrad, and that was a interesting experience. I like to say, really, my entire adult life, I've been in the minority because I was a minority at Berkeley, and then certainly in Sacramento, I have been. And for whatever reason, I guess that's where God wanted me. And so after graduating from Berkeley, I went and got my law degree ultimately, and started practicing in Yuba City. Mostly like an ag business kind of practice, but immediately got involved in like local politics and ultimately ran for the state assembly, and I've been there for 11 years now, representing kind of the northern Sacramento Valley district that I'm honored to serve. So,
well, I mean, I've had a very unique vantage point in, seeing friends like you and Josh Hoover and Shannon Grove operate in this very interesting space of California politics. And I really want to know, what is it like being a Christian conservative, an important voice in this space, but in a state where your views often seem outnumbered? There have to be moments where you feel discouraged or misunderstood. Talk to us about what that looks like and how you navigate that as a Christian.
Yeah, it is a challenge. One more story from my childhood. There was I do remember very vividly praying that prayer of Solomon. And like reading about Solomon, that he was become king, and he wanted to make sure that he was going to make good decisions, and he prayed, and the one thing he asked from God was wisdom, right? And as a young man, like really, having that passion for politics and looking at some of the debates that were going on and saying, the right side is not winning. We're not, righteousness is not prevailing. Praying that prayer. And I would say throughout my life, in my time in politics, I feel like that stayed with me, is that God is constantly remind. I don't do it perfectly by any means, right? I certainly try to, but I feel like I'm constantly reminded of by the Word of, okay, here's where you need to be. Here's where you need to focus. And there's been many times, I would say, there's the normal that I think everybody can relate to. California and just the policies coming out of there, they're obviously very terrible.
Yeah.
They're not in alignment with our values as Christians.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is very frustrating. But what I've always tried to do in that time is make sure I'm speaking the truth.
Yeah.
And staying true to my values and not shying away from speaking that truth into a place that may not hear it.
Yeah.
They may just not hear it at all.
Yeah.
But that is what I think I'm commanded to do. And I draw a lot of inspiration from Jeremiah, Isaiah. I mean, all these prophets, right, of the Old Testament, many of them were not heard in their time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying I'm a prophet by any means, but I relate to that experience. And I remember especially like reading in Jeremiah so many times where like, they're just not listening to wisdom.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a frustrating place to be. But nonetheless, like God calls us to go in there and be true to it. And what I think has been really great is that I have made relationships with people, from all different spectrums, right? And I feel like even if I haven't won that cause or passed that bill or stopped that bill that I was seeking to, accomplish in that moment, I did think I was a voice, as a Christian speaking truth into a dark place at times.
Yeah.
And those are really valuable moments. I'll give one, one of the first examples was there was a big resolution coming up on abortion. And it was probably one of the first speeches I gave on the floor, where I just said, hey, look, I want to give you the perspective of someone, who believes in life and believes that life comes from God and that it's sacred and that, of course we understand different circumstances that people find themselves in. But essentially just speaking that truth of like, we believe that this is a life. And if it's a life, it has rights, and if it has rights, then we cannot allow the murder, of this life for, whatever reason that you're trying to, justify that for. And I think, only because I was told that, like, different legislators like, man, that's the first time I've heard someone really say it in that way.
Wow.
Right. And I even had some on the left that came up to me. I can remember actually like Lorena Gonzalez, who's like very well-known, very left progressive legislator, coming up to me after like, hey, the way you said that, I really related to, and it was compassionate. I don't agree with you. Right. But nonetheless, I appreciated the way that you conveyed. And to me, I can only explain that as God, right?
Yeah.
Like God gave me that, and I feel it at times. It's like a stirring, before I go into a floor debate that, hey, I know that God has given me something to say.
Yeah.
And I will say I've tried to be as obedient as possible to doing that, in that place. And I believe it has made a difference, even if it doesn't always show up in the vote.
Yeah. There has to be moments where you feel discouraged or misunderstood. I mean, as Christians, we have hope, we have an eternal perspective in everything we do, but being in the space that you're in, there has to be moments where you have felt the weight of what you're doing, the opposition that you face. How do you navigate that?
I pray. So that's one thing.
That's a good one.
Definitely, especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed, try to just give that to God and then try to be led towards where I think He's, placing me. There's been many times where I wasn't completely sure, right?
Yeah.
How to approach something. And it can be challenging, especially when you're talking to people who are very adamant and passionate about the complete opposite worldview that you have.
Yeah.
But it's in those times where I think even just having that private conversation with somebody, I think can make a difference. I saw, I'll give another example. There was a bill that was really going after homeschooling, and my wife and I had homeschooled our kids for a time. We've been around a lot of homeschool families, And one of the authors of that legislation was a guy named Jose Medina, who's from Riverside. And I went to breakfast with him one morning. We just, I was like, hey, I was like, I want to talk to you about this issue. And I think he suggested, he goes, hey, well, let's go to breakfast. And I said, okay. So, over some bacon and eggs, we talked about homeschool and, why I felt like this particular piece of legislation was just over the top. It was basically going to even allow fire chiefs to go into the homes to make sure they were safe for doing homeschooling. Wow. And it arose out of a terrible situation that happened down in his district where there was abuse, and it was clear like, these particular parents were monsters who abused their kids. And they're almost using that as, oh, well, that means we've got to really regulate all homeschool. And of course, we know that, overwhelmingly, these are some of the most amazing families. Kids do so well, they prosper. And during the conversation, Jose was like, hey, I know this guy that's actually, and I'm forgetting the name, he's an author, and he was homeschooled, and he went to Yale and, all these different, then he goes, man, I've really always been amazed by him. And I go, well, I mean, if, and it was those kind of exchanges, like he had his own personal relationship and stories that he brought up. I conveyed, what me and my wife had done, and I was like, hey, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what we're doing here. And in fact, overwhelmingly, we see that kids do really well in this environment. And we had a really good conversation. And I don't know exactly if this is the result, but I will tell you, like a couple of weeks later, that bill got pulled back. Wow. And I think there were other people that had conversations with him too, and with the other authors. But ultimately, like that made a difference, right? And it's something that I think maybe people don't always see. But being able to go in there and say, hey, and this is, one of it was, hey, this is why I homeschool, because of our faith is one of those reasons. And that's important to me. And I think it's important to a lot of people of faith that they're able to, inculcate their values into their next generation and teach the way that they want to teach. And many parents have just been empowered, right, by being able to do that, right? And so, that was one of those instances where I felt like, it's not always easy to navigate. You don't always succeed, but that was one where, not only did I have I think a good, powerful conversation, but it made a difference in that legislation not moving forward.
Yeah. In this space, I have found myself at multiple junctures where there's the right thing to do, and then there's the popular thing to do. And the popular thing may not be inherently wrong, but there is something that this is a clear decision, that this is the right decision, but it may not be popular. Do you find yourself ever in that tension where, I mean, you in the assembly, you're bold, you're courageous. I mean, I've watched a number of your floor speeches. I mean, you have no problem getting up and saying the right thing. But do you ever find yourself in this space and having to deal with people on both sides of the aisle where there is the more popular thing to do, but this is the right thing, but there's going to be a high price for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think about that a lot right now in the times that we're in. And I loved Charlie Kirk's memorial.
Yeah.
And the message that came out of that, particularly from Erica Kirk, which was just a powerful, powerful message. And others that got up to speak, but she conveyed it in such an amazing way, which is like, hey, we as believers, like, we do forgive.
Yeah.
And that's especially not an easy thing to do when you just feel under attack all the time, right? When you feel like your values are under attack, when you feel like the other side is doing whatever they can to undermine you, and in this case, take your life, right? I mean, Charlie did nothing more than go and speak truth, on college campuses. And I could relate to him in so many different ways. His ministry was amazing, and for her to be able to say that, and I think because right now in our time there is a lot of like, well, we got to punch back, we got to fight fire with fire, as the governor has said during this whole redistricting battle. And even on our side, like, well, that's how they play, so we got to do the same thing, and we just got to, come. And it's like, no, that's not how the Christian lives their life.
Yeah.
We go about things in a different way.
Yeah.
And I'm always reminded of that, of the scripture where God is saying, "Hey, my ways are not your ways."
Yeah.
And you have to humbly seek Him and like, okay, God, what do you want me to do in this moment?
Yeah.
It may be, being really aggressive and pushing for what we believe and having to go into battle.
Yeah.
Right. But sometimes I think it does look like turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
And we know that there's power in that.
Yeah.
Huge power in that. When we were in that debate on the floor, I brought that up and said, "Hey, fire with fire, you just burn it all down." And then I cited the scripture like, hey, where Jesus is saying, you've heard, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I'm telling you, no, love your enemies, right? And pray for those who persecute you. I recited that, scripture on the floor, and it was again one of those moments where I felt like this is what needs to be said. And I may not even really, there's part of me that's, man, look at what you guys are trying to do to us with this redistricting. It is a terrible thing. But to recite truth, which is, hey, actually turning the other cheek here would be the bigger thing to do. And would be the more powerful thing to do.
Yeah. I've been walking through a similar conviction. I just did a teaching at my local church on the Good Samaritan. It's one of those parables that everyone thinks they know about. You grow up hearing it in Sunday school, and you kind of walk away thinking, okay, it's a nice little message about being kind. But when you explore it, there's this deep, radical love for people that you can't stand.
Right.
You see in the parable, there is a Samaritan and a Jew. Well, in the Bible, we know Samaritans and Jews hated each other. I mean, they had a century of conflict and hostility. And to see the story unfold where you see the pious religious folk who would seem holy on the outside, those would be the people that you would think would stop for this dying naked Jew on the side of a road.
Right.
But instead you see a Samaritan, and you continue to explore it. And there's a moment that was so convicting to me, which is where the Samaritan pours Samaritan oil and Samaritan wine on this man. Well, we know what's wine. It's a disinfectant, right? It cleans out bacteria, and oil is soothing. It's the actual thing that heals the wound. And there's so many people in this space that operate in this pendulum of one or the other. You have one crowd that they love pouring the oil. Like they're encouragers. It's
right.
Believing the best. We don't want to ruffle any feathers. We just want to soothe the situation. But without the wine, you're soothing it, but you're not disinfecting it.
Right.
And then you have people that love wine. They love to call out sin, and
right.
they love to rage and call out, in the name of holiness, correct people. But without the oil, you're just disinfecting it, but you're not healing it.
Right.
And so that's a conviction I've been walking through is, it's easy to love the person that disagrees or agrees with me, but how do I navigate a situation in which someone that wishes me harm,
right?
And I've been in that situation, I know you've been in that situation, though that's when it really matters. And this parable is in the context of salvation. A man comes to Jesus, how do I inherit eternal life?
Right.
And this is the story he gives.
Yeah.
So this isn't about like being a better person or being nicer. This is about entering the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
And how we treat people that wish us ill. And that's such a conviction for me. It's a conviction for the church of how do we love the people that wish us dead?
It really is, man. I mean, I've been thinking lately, one that's come to me is the woman at the well, right? Who is also a Samaritan, right? And, Jesus, it's a wonderful story, right? Where, Jesus is very thirsty by the well, and here's this woman drawing the water, right? And he essentially just gives her the truth, right? Essentially just tells her like, hey, you need living water, and I'll tell you the truth. If you drink of the water I give you, you'll have eternal life, right?
Yeah.
And it changes her whole entire life and perspective, right? But I think there's one part of it was like, hey, and I've said this to different groups, like we worship on different mountains, man.
Hmm.
Like the Samaritan, that's because like, hey, the Samaritans believed that you could worship at, I can't remember the mount, but but it was different from Jerusalem, right? And Jesus talks about that, like, yeah, that's true. We worship, but we need to worship in spirit and in truth, right? And we worship in spirit, right? And he connected with this woman in an amazing way, who was someone who obviously was living in sin. Right. And he said, I've told you, not only do you have a man who's not your husband, you've had 7 husbands, right? And so he told her the truth, right? Like, hey, you're living wrong, right? But he had this amazing, like, but I want you to come into the living water that I can give you, right? And I want you to, and she goes, and the end of that story is she goes back and says, and tells everybody about Jesus, right? Like, and I think that is, you're right. I mean, I feel like that is the sort of tension that I think we're in as believers in the public sphere, battling over these are spiritual battles. They're not just political battles, right? And we are worshiping in spirit. We're ministering in spirit. And I think trying to get across the other side that here's truth, and still welcoming in, but always welcoming in, but being able to call out, hey, no, this is wrong. And not shy away from that, but always leaving the door open, not closing it down. I think that is like a key part of being a Christian leader. And I feel like, I mean, I've again never done that perfectly, but I think that if you talk to some of my colleagues on the other side, they would say that like, I have a heart for them, and then I treat them with respect and dignity, even when I very much disagree with them. Right. And at the end of the day, ultimately what we want is people to really come to know the truth. Right. And we want them to have a renewed mind. And we don't always get to see, I think that's the thing we have to remind ourselves. We don't always maybe get to see it, right? It may be many years from now that people go, oh, that word or that seed that was planted like takes root. And so I take a lot of hope in that, along with some of the good victories that we've had in the legislature as well.
There's a woman in our county that runs a very large progressive advocacy group. And this individual identifies as a pansexual agnostic and leans on socialist tendencies. And so when you look at not just theology, human sexuality, but politics, I mean, there's nothing that we agree on. And for the last 5 years, this individual has viciously attacked me and has shown up at our events to protest. I mean, there's been moments where I've had legitimate fear. And about a year and a half ago, I had this conviction of, I'm going to reach out to this woman. And in the flesh, every part of me was saying, don't do it. But I reached out to this individual and said, hey, I would just love to start a conversation. I mean, every day you're posting on your organizational page about me and the American Council, but I'd love to just talk and see what comes of it. And so we started talking back and forth for probably about a month on Facebook. We ended up grabbing coffee and had a very interesting conversation. And about another month took place, and I was teaching a class at my church on human sexuality. And again, this is a pansexual atheist.
Right.
And she reached out to me and said, hey, can I attend your class? Well, the last encounter I had with this individual was her trying to storm the doors of our church service. And we had police surrounding the church because this whole group was trying to break into our sanctuary.
Right.
So I was like, oh man. So
what is going on?
I know.
Here,
I thought about it. I prayed about it. I'm like, you know what? You can't interrupt, can't bring signs, but if you want to come, I will save you a seat in the front row.
Yeah.
So she comes and hears the teaching and comes up to me afterward and said, I don't believe in anything you said. Don't believe in your God. I don't by your politics, but there's something about you and the way that you talked about this issue that I can honestly say I don't hate you anymore. And I was floored.
Right.
And so fast forward, I'm speaking in our men's Bible study last week, and I've continued to develop a rapport with this person. Continues to post about me all the time and things like
Right.
that. But I get a message from her saying, hey, I'm going through a really hard time in my life right now. Really hard.
Right.
And I don't know how to navigate it. And I'm wondering if you could send me a Bible. I would have never guessed in a million years that that woman would have reached out to me asking for a Bible. I tell that story to affirm what you were just talking about in this. I don't know where
totally.
I don't know where that's going to go. I don't know if I'll ever see the fruit of those seeds, but they're seeds planted. And It's a reminder to me that in the space that you operate in, the space that I operate in, it's mission work.
Right.
I mean, if we just win arguments, but we're not winning people, I think we've kind of lost the point. Right. We've got to speak the truth, but we got to bring people along the way with us. And so it's just a reminder that the work that you do is so important, because it's not just about policy and law. I mean, we're talking about real people. There's people behind every policy.
Right.
And I know it's such a tension to live in, but it's missions work when you think of it.
It is. I mean, all work is ministry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as believers, I think we should really take that to heart. Like, no matter where you are, like, okay, I'm in politics, I'm in Sacramento. That's my workplace. That's my, my mission field.
Yeah.
Right. But no matter what you're doing, like, that is kind of your ministry, right? And in that work and giving, and even like you said, I think that's totally how it is. It's just like God gives us a little nudge, like, hey, maybe you should just try to talk to that person, right? Yeah. And it's not a big thing, right? I mean, it does feel like that in the moment, like, okay, you really want me to go to coffee with this person,
fighting it,
right? But maybe just a little step of obedience, right? I think like always seems to really generate amazing results, right? And I've had similar types of situations, that where people say, hey, would you pray for me? Oh yeah, absolutely. Right. I have, a person that, is on the other side that is very, pro-abortion, right? But texted me when, they had their, a baby, right? Mm-hmm. And we're like, so ecstatic about that, or when they found out they were pregnant, and because we had like established this kind of relationship, I had talked about often another thing I talk about in that context is my twins, because they were born while I was in office and they came 10 weeks early, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and so we went through all that, experience of, even at 18 weeks, they were worried about what was going on with their heart, and they were ready to do surgery on their beating hearts at 18 weeks, to save them. At 30 weeks when they were born, when you're not supposed to be born, technically, there was so much done to save their lives, right? And I point out, like, man, the dichotomy of that is like, man, what's the difference between my twins at 18 weeks, at 30 weeks, and any other child, right? And we'll do everything. And it's because they're wanted. Is that the only? That can't be the only difference, right? Yeah. Like, so, I think those kind of moments, and when you're able to share that, and just like Charlie Kirk said, right, man, it's when people stop talking that we get violence, right?
Yeah.
It's really like making that initial thing, like, hey, let's just talk. Let me hear you out. You hear me out. And there's something that happens in that dialogue when we're not just yelling at each other or talking past each other, that I think is spiritual. And when we allow God to speak through us, right, and we impart that truth, right, it's powerful, right? And so We certainly, I think in these times, we need so much more of that, right? Because
Yeah.
right now there is so much turmoil. There's so much talking past each other. There's so much, turmoil and violence,
Yeah.
right? That I think now more than ever we need God's truth,
Yeah.
right?
What is something that you wish Christians understood better about the realities of serving in a place like the California state legislature?
How hard it is to win, right? I mean, because I think sometimes people are like, oh man, well, if you just did this, like, and if we just had this, we'd win those elections. And I mean, I think a lot of times people are, I get it. I mean, because, from the outside in, I think it's easy to like say, oh, well, it would be to have the easy answers, right? And it's like, look, we're so overwhelmed. I mean, it is like being in Babylon,
Yeah.
right? And Daniel is another person that I certainly like, I draw a lot of inspiration from, like being in a place that like, you're in the kingdom that is not of
Yeah.
God at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're praying and you're fasting and you're asking God for favor, right? And Daniel in the most amazing way gets that favor, right? And like and gains the trust of the pagan king, right? And so that, I mean, to me, that's a lot of what it is like is, I'm in a place where I am completely outnumbered. Very hard for us to win any votes. And I'm really just like asking God for the strength and to give me some favor.
Yeah.
Right. To be able, and he has done that. I mean, I've been able to get many bills passed. It always surprises people like how many bills I've actually gotten passed and signed by governors. I would say a lot of them have to deal with my district and trying to like make things better in my district. But nonetheless, that is what that struggle is. It's not I wish it were as easy as just giving a speech, which I do a lot of them. But man, so many speeches I've given don't result in people changing their votes. But I would say so many prayers that I've said, that I've prayed, and just little interactions that I've had have actually resulted in some things either stopping or not moving forward. I mean, another one was the conversion therapy bill, right?
Yeah.
And I know you were involved with that too, with Evan Lowe, who, like just came from this perspective that this is a very evil practice, and told his story very passionately about being a young gay man and coming out and how he felt, all this oppression and, and so I remember like listening to that story and like really trying to hear where he was coming from with that. And then being able to talk to him and say, hey, look, man, here's how we view conversion therapy as a Christian. Like, we believe that all of us need conversion therapy, right? I was like, in the sense that not, and this is that God wants to renew our mind. And I like tried to kind of explain that, as Christians, we believe that all of us sin and fall short of the glory of God, and therefore we need Christ. And like our entire faith is built on the fact that we are being every day renewed and changed. And, so if you understand it that way, then I think you maybe better understand where we're coming from a faith stance and why like some sort of ban on us being able to talk to anybody about sin and, whether that sin is homosexuality or any other sin, right, that people struggle through. To ban that is like really at the heart and kind of the core of our religion, of our faith. And, and there were many other people I think that spoke to him, and amazing, like, look, he could have gone forward the next day and pushed that through the legislature. He had the votes, like, he could have pushed it through that day, and he didn't, right? And I give him credit for that because I think he did listen to us, but I also feel like that was a God thing too. I mean, I think like that could have, there was no reason why that didn't get pushed forward, right? It was only, I think, but for, people speaking truth and trying to have relationship,
Yeah.
right? And not
Yeah.
just try to be, kind of in your face,
Yeah.
so again, that kind of push pull that we were
Yeah.
talking about at the beginning. I think stop that. And those are some of those moments, right, that
Yeah.
I look back on and I go, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think it's really important for people to, like what you were talking about at the beginning. It's really easy to look in from the outside and say, well, you need to do this, this, this. I liken it to my mom loves football. I mean, she is a football fanatic.
Right.
And I hate watching football with her because she is this short Italian woman. But when she gets in her living room, it's like she thinks she's playing with them because
Right.
she's yelling at the TV, telling them, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing this? I'm like, these guys are 7 feet tall and 300 pounds, and you're 5 foot Italian woman saying how easy it is for you to be doing this, this, this. And I liken it to this in a lot of ways. It's so easy for people to look in from the outside and say, well, why can't we just do this, 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 having no context to the complexity, the nuance, and the struggle it is to operate in the space that you operate.
Right.
It's hard.
It is hard. It's like, people here lately say like California is red. And you're like, well, look, man, like I want that, no doubt. And like, hey, there are things that need to change, and we're trying to, push for reforms and all those things.
Yeah.
But like, it isn't red right now, man.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that just have they worship on a different mountain, man.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that. Now, does that mean we give up? Of course not, dude. But I also want to be real about where we are and the work that we need to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, like looking at this as, from the Christian standpoint, looking at it from a ministry standpoint, it's kind of actually a pretty amazing place to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the early church, totally oppressed, right?
Yeah.
Like no power.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they had the power.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So many different places where we are persecuted. We don't have political power. We don't have any kind of power, but we do have the gospel.
Yeah.
And I think if we really start trying to put ourselves in that perspective, I think it changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'd love to be in total power and control, man. I would, right? I mean, like, again, my whole adult life, I've never, for whatever reason, God's like, this is your lot, but, in some ways, being in the minority and being that voice in the wilderness can be even more powerful.
Yeah. I'm reminded of Jeremiah. You talked about Jeremiah earlier, and they're in a culture where they are the minority. They're hated, they're detested, they're persecuted. And they go to the prophet and say, what are we going to do? And I think they think that God's going to bring chariots down and carry them away, and they're going to go somewhere better. And
he could give the popular message, right?
But his message to them was, I want you to build homes and plant gardens.
Right.
I want you to have kids. I want your kids to have kids.
In captivity.
Yes.
Right.
And he ends it with saying, I want you to pray for the peace and welfare of the nation that I've exiled you to, because in its welfare, you'll find your own. That's this moment.
Right.
We could get up and go do what a bunch of other people are doing and move out of California, get out of exile. But I believe the call in this moment is to do what you were just talking about, is to stay, because people need truth.
Right.
Someone has to be the voice of truth in a moment of profound confusion. People need moral clarity. We have to have that in this moment.
Totally. And that's where, I think that's part of like that Charlie Kirk Memorial like really struck me, because like we are at this, I think, point where there is a lot of momentum, I would say like on the conservative side, Republican side in terms of politically, but how much more powerful if that message is gospel centered. Yeah. Right. And I think about that, and like, I just feel like Erica Kirk, like she just brought that in that moment. It was perfect. And it's like, to me, that's the path that we got to go down. Of just trying to, unabashedly, unashamedly point people to Christ. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And again, I know we're imperfect. We don't always do that, perfectly. Right. But that is the only thing that will really change our culture, change our society, right, is people coming to that knowledge. And so I thought that was really cool. The other you reminded me is from Jeremiah, is like they go to him like, hey, speak what's going to happen. And right, he's like, look, the Babylonians are coming and you're all going to get conquered.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the city is going to be sacked,
Yeah.
right? And he's basically giving the truth to God. And like the false prophets are saying, oh no, you're going to have a great victory.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's going to be all, and it's like, no, that wasn't from God. It was a hard word from God. It's like, no, you've been rebellious. Right. Yeah. And I'm certainly not saying that's where we are, but like, it
was hard.
To your point earlier, like I draw inspiration from that because like we want to seek God's face. Like, God, what is it that you're doing? What do you really want right now? And I think we should always be trying to do that. Abraham Lincoln actually said it pretty beautifully. Like, I humbly, pray that I'm on God's side.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that, hey, I'm on, God's on my side.
Yeah.
I'm going to really pray and go, God, I hope I'm on your side and what you want and what your truth is.
Yeah.
And help me to like really speak that right now, wherever I'm at and whatever the cost.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard.
That's a hard, it's a hard, that's, a hard thing. And yet, I think when we're just like obedient and we try to sit in that, like it becomes easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, a lot of interesting things going on right now. I mean, and that's why I'm even more excited about being in this fight, than I was when I first started out. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I can speak for a lot of people when I sincerely mean I appreciate the work that you're doing. I know it's hard. A lot of times it goes unappreciated, and with all the opposition and challenges that you face in that space, thank God that we have Christian leaders like you that are standing up and speaking truth in a moment that desperately needs it. So thank you.
Thanks, man. Thank you for the work that you do and in the ministry that you have in our community. And, American Council, I think has been a godsend, and, getting people engaged, right? I mean, and getting people to see that, politics is not this dirty thing, actually. Yeah. Well, it can be, but it's not especially the church, like we should be engaged. We have to be engaged. In kind of all aspects of our society and our culture, right? I mean, that's where we're meant to be, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're listening and you've ever felt outnumbered or discouraged, I hope this conversation gives you hope. Take heart, because God calls us to be faithful, not always popular. He plants his people in hard places for a reason, like James. So wherever he's placed you in government, education, business, or the church, my hope is that we lead with clarity, with courage, and character. To watch the full episode and more, you can go to theamericancouncil.com or text CLARITY to 96341. My name is Taryn Abell, and this is Clarity in Controversy.